Okay, thank you very much indeed to everybody for coming to take part in this webinar. And thanks especially to Jonathan for organising all the technicalities for us. My name is Mandy Haggis. I'm the coordinator of the European Environmental Paper Network. And the plan that we have is I'm going to give you a brief introduction about who we are and what the project is about overall, and then hand over to Jim Ford, who's going to talk about the concept of paper utility. So I'll go straight ahead. The European Environmental Paper Network is a broad coalition of, at the moment, 68 environmental and social non-governmental organisations from around Europe mostly. We're in 24 different countries, and we range from very big organisations that everybody's heard of, like Greenpeace and WWF, down to lots of little smaller organisations that have more local or particular issue focuses. We all came together in 2006 to write a shared vision for the use and production of paper in our society. There's a similar network in North America, and the network overall is growing globally all the time. Our vision is basically for 5 things. We want to see in Europe and North America reduced paper consumption, reduced reliance on virgin forest fibers, social responsibility, responsible fiber sourcing, and clean production of paper. And the reason that we're bothered about that is because we see too many beautiful forests like this, rich in biodiversity and providing really important services such as carbon capture, being turned by the paper industry into things like this to produce paper which very shortly ends up in the bin or in the dump. Still a remarkable amount is going to the dump. There are a very broad range of impacts of paper making. The overall, the global paper industry, the use of paper globally causes more carbon emissions than aviation, considerably more. Yet we're all bothered about flying and not so much about our paper use. Forests are destroyed by the paper industry still today. Its use of energy is very high. It causes considerable waste, uses a lot of water, and produces pollution. It's creating plantations of non-indigenous tree species in many parts of the world that are causing problems. It's involved in illegal logging in some countries, and there are human rights abuses, particularly land rights abuses, associated with some paper industries. So there's a very broad brush, very broad cross-section of problems which we're campaigning. Our very many member organisations are trying to tackle, and we want your help, basically. Our top priority, and what we hope will become your top priority, is to reduce paper consumption through paper efficiency measures. This is the most direct way to reduce the negative environmental impacts of the paper industry. It's also an ethical issue. The United Nations says that everybody on Earth needs about 30 kilograms a year to have a full and rich involvement in education and to participate in democracies. But globally, most people on the planet are way below this paper poverty line. So if you think about a school in many African countries, for example, that doesn't have enough school books for children, that's what we call below the paper poverty line. Yet in Europe, we're each using around 200 kilograms of paper per year. So we're taking far more than our fair share of this precious resource. And finally, saving paper, bringing in paper efficiency measures will save you money. So it's a real win-win thing to tackle. The Shrink project began in 2007. We set up a website. We got 17,000 individuals making pledges to save paper. We asked all the European governments to reduce their paper use and adopt paper efficiency policies. And we challenged 20 UK companies to halve their paper use. And we've come back since the middle part of last year with a new project in the UK. We're asking 60 organisations from a range of different sectors in society to take action on paper efficiency. So that includes supermarkets, catalogue retailers, financial firms, utilities, governmental bodies and universities. And we're offering to help, if we possibly can, to encourage organisations to reduce paper use. We're producing a scorecard in July, assessing how all of these organisations are doing on their paper efficiency measures. We've updated our website and included some more case studies, and there are more on the way. And we're running seminars and webinars like this one. There's one on the debate about paper versus digital on the 8th of May, and another on packaging on the 5th of June. So those are both webinars like this one. And we're running a seminar on the 9th of July in London about the climate change impacts of paper, which we call paper vapor. So now I'll hand over to Jim, who will talk more specifically about paper utility as a way to get rapid impacts on paper efficiency. So.
And thanks for having me. I'm calling from far away from California. Really missing being in the UK, but I moved back just a little while ago, a few months ago. And thanks everybody for being here. So this is kind of a new topic for us. We've just come up with this new fact sheet, and Eddie can correct me. I think it'll be available very shortly, and you can all read it. It sort of just goes over the points we're going to make here, but it's kind of a new concept, and it's a concept that we came up with because when we talk about paper efficiency or we talk about reducing consumption, the rejoinder from the paper industry, but you know, we need paper. Paper's good. You can't live without paper. They want to get rid of your toilet roll or something like this. And that's not really what we intended to talk about. So we thought we would come up with a way to show what it is we are talking about. And it's really about reducing our consumption and get rid of waste. In other words, using paper where it has real social value or individual value, you know, for people. You know, we're talking about eliminating or reducing drastically those kind of one-use, short-term uses of paper that, you know, we didn't need in the past, but somehow in modern society we've come to need them. And we're talking about eliminating paper that creates additional resource demands. And I'm sure we'll touch on this again, but just think of junk mail, advertising, et cetera, that you get in the mail. Not only did they have to create all this stuff, you barely looked at it, and then they're expecting you to manage it after they sent it to you, unasked for. So it's creating demands on you for your time and effort. And where does this come from? We think the public, in large part, agrees that there are lots of wasteful uses of paper. So we think it actually is something that society is calling for. But businesses also, you know, they can increase efficiency just buying less paper, but also managing all that less paper. That's been a finding that, well, we reduced our purchases of paper. That was great, but boy, we created a lot of space. We don't need as much moving physical things around, and it saved us a lot of time. And businesses can also serve their customers by giving them the paper that they need and not paper that they don't want, and just creates a headache for them. Just very, very quickly, just to have an idea of about, you know, approximately where paper goes into which different kinds of uses in Europe. You know, a large part of it shipping and packing materials, packaging very big. So packaging and shipping, that, you know, is almost 50%, quite a large amount. Magazines, 8%, but catalogs even more. Books only 6%. Just pure advertising is another 10%. And although one could argue that packaging is, in a large part, just an extended form of advertising as well. And hygienic only 9%. But hygienic is probably not the right word. It's tissue. It's kitchen rolls. That's those sorts of applications. So we tried to define in our paper what we think are the social benefits of paper uses. So these are things that have critical functions in the economy: money. Everybody needs a passport, etc. Social benefits include literacy and learning. Books, magazines, newspapers, these are all important things for literacy, learning, passing of information. There are social functions which we consider to be important as a society: maps, writing pads, again, news. There are really important entertainment and arts functions of paper, certainly, and also some hygienic functions, although probably everybody knows that there are some uses that are probably not critical. And then there's the other side. What are things that lead to inefficiency? So there are products that are created that aren't used in the intended way. I don't know what the current statistics are, but in the UK it was found that there's something like twice the number of magazines are produced as are actually purchased, let alone read. I did a study for the book industry group, and we found that 25% of all books were not even sold. They were just returned. So, really large inefficiency there, even though magazines and books are things we could say have social benefit. There's duplicative functions, using paper plates when we can use normal plates, for example, or probably more important, all of this paperwork that we do when we're storing it already in digital formats. And as we've seen, this is a real area that we can make a lot of headway on as we become better and better at using these electronic formats. We think inefficiency is whenever people don't, are sent or are, quote unquote, forced to use paper that they didn't ask for. A lot of this is junk mail and advertising, over packaging. And also inefficiency is when we just use a bit of paper for a short while, one use, maybe no uses, and then discard it. Paper uses a lot of resources, and it's such a pity when we just use it one time. So we've come up with this paper utility matrix, and what we hope to do with that is for people to get a more visceral understanding of paper efficiency, a way to think about prioritizing your efforts, where to focus and what to care about, and also to understand the social importance of paper use. So this is our matrix, and we've put it on X and Y axes on for both the utility of paper and volumes of paper. And you can take a look at this more closely, but I'll just go through a few of these boxes. So for example, we have high utility papers, ones that have a high social utility, and have a low volume. And these are the kinds of papers that everyone would agree we all need, we all want to use, we all really care about, really enhances life for everybody. We mentioned money and passports, but there are probably lots of other uses. Even books might fall in this category, although it might be somewhere in the middle volume. But for these kinds of uses, we don't really need to take any action. These are perfectly fine. Don't even need to really even think about these kinds of papers a second thought. Then there are low utility and high volume papers and paper end uses. or applications. And these kinds of things, these are, give us very little social value, but have a huge impact because of the very large impact of paper on the environment in a number of ways, as Mandy discussed. Mass advertising, catalogs, junk mail, mass mailings that are rarely read. Even you could put overprinting of magazines or even books, and overpackaging are examples of this. In catalogs, I don't know what the number is for the UK. I'm sure it's similar, but only 2 to 3% of catalogs actually result in a sale. So 97% of them are discarded without even being ending in a sale. So how useful is that? But if they can keep the price down for sending them out, then they can make it worth their while, I guess. And these kinds of this category on our matrix is the area where we think we can make the most efficient and deepest cuts in our paper use, and still maintain the social value of paper and use it for all those the things that we really want in life. The two other categories, and one of them is low utility but low volume. And these probably are not socially beneficial uses of paper, but then again, not a high priority for action, simply because we won't get the most efficiency as quickly. But then again, these are areas where we can rethink it, maybe eliminate it, change the medium, maybe to electronic formats, these kinds of things, but not a priority for action, not like the high volume but low utility end uses. So one example of what we're talking about, although it predates the matrix and our fact sheet that we're coming out with, but is the perfect example of what we're talking about, is what Standard Life did. They cut their paper use by 23% after they surveyed their shareholders and customers, I think they're shareholders actually, about whether they wanted a printed annual report. They did a survey within their company to figure out where they could produce paper, and they had great results. So they actually, use this idea of, hey, let's figure out where the utility is, and we'll make big cuts in those areas of low utility and high volume. And they achieved great efficiency. They're one of our star examples. And there are many others, and I'm sure Mandy could probably provide you with more. And Mandy, you can jump in any time. So some steps that you can take. Important thing is, first you got to capture the data, understand what your customers, your employees, your members, et cetera, what they think is useful, because it really should be driven by where people think there are social benefits to paper. And then, understand where we think there's great benefits, and then where people actually, maybe they don't. We might think, when we send out some kind of magazines or some kind of updates or newsletters in a paper format, that it's useful because we want the information to get out, but maybe no one's reading it. So we should really know about that. And we should know that, so much paper ends up in the bin just after we use it. I know when I was in graduate school and computers were really raging, people were printing out massive amounts of stuff, and we had no way of tracking it, and the waste was incredible. So I'm sure there's an area for great improvement there. And again, once you've done that survey, you've determined the utility, understood the volumes with your purchasing numbers, you can prioritize reductions in those low utility areas with high volume and really make great cuts. And this will be great for the environment and probably for your lives as well. And so I want to thank everybody for listening, and my apologies, it wasn't the smoothest of all presentations. It's kind of a new topic for us, and I've never given this presentation before. But Mandy and I would be happy to answer any questions, and there's a link there that you can go to and get our fact sheet. Hopefully it's ready. Mandy can update us about that. And thanks, everybody.
Okay, I'd like to say a huge thank you to both Jim and Mandy for presenting there. And as I've said, if anyone does have any questions, please use the message box in the lower right-hand corner. And nobody's posted currently at the moment, so if I just leave it a minute or two, if you do have any questions, please post. Make sure it gets sent to everybody so that Jim can answer.
While I'm waiting, I can confirm that, yeah, the fact sheet about paper utility is up on that link there on that page on our website.
Okay, there doesn't appear to be any questions. So once again, I'd just like to say a big thank you to both Jim and to Mandy for presenting. All of the slides will be available on the Sustainability Exchange, and please take time to complete the survey. Thank you for attending.